Hello. This week, let's take a look at Wort chillers. Now, there are various on the market and they work in different ways with a range of efficiencies. So, if you're looking at water usage and speed of cooling, there are differences between the methods used. After the boil and maybe the whirlpool, if you're carrying out that step, we actually need to cool the wort quickly. We want to get that yeast pitched as quickly as possible. This is so that it's our chosen yeast that ferments your wort, rather than any bacteria or wild yeast that can infect and spoil the beer actually at this stage. There's obviously the caveat that some brewers actually want wild yeast or bacteria, but we'll certainly park that style for this week. Cooling the wort quickly also reduces the chance of dimethyl sulfide being produced. Now, this is actually an off flavour. It tends to taste of corn at the lower end, but in larger quantities, you'll taste in vegetal, kind of cabbagey. It's really not nice. DMS can be detected at really low levels. So if you're brewing something like a Pils or Helles, then really look out for this issue. Cooling quickly also helps produce a cold break that can help with clearing, but we'll talk more about that a little later. Pretty much every commercial brewery's chiller of choice is what they call a plate heat exchanger. Cold water is fed one way through and hot wort the other way. The cold water picks up the heat from the wort and cools it. These are incredibly efficient and they're also available on a smaller scale. Really, the only difference is the commercial examples come apart for cleaning, whereas the smaller versions, which are brazed, obviously don't. So, on a brew at home scale, there are basically two options for cooling. You can take the brewery route with a plate chiller, or what we call an immersion chiller. Now, with an immersion type, instead of running wort through the tubing, you just run cold water direct from your tap and you place the whole chiller within the hot wort. They can be placed in the kettle before the end of boil, and this takes care of sanitation, and various sizes are available. But there are limitations on batch size, and in my opinion, it's about 50 litres is about the maximum batch size I would advise for these. They can be made more efficient if either the chiller is moved around within the wort, or actually more effectively if you can whirlpool the wort over the chiller. In fact, this actually makes a huge difference. One advantage that many brewers see with an immersion chiller is they leave the cold break behind within the kettle. The idea being the wort is chilled within the kettle before transferring to your fermenter. Therefore, cold break gets left behind. And actually, you can achieve crystal clear wort into your fermenter using this method. Now, back to the commercial breweries and plate chillers. As the wort is chilled en route, the cold break material ends up in the fermenter. Now, the wort is nothing like as clear. However, I've never seen this as an issue in the final product. Let's have a look at the variations that we have available. There are two sizes of immersion chiller, one with a batch size of about 23 litres and the bigger one for 50 litres. Now, they're made of stainless steel and they have the common hose lock type fittings, making the water supply very easy. For cleaning after use, they can both be put in the dishwasher or easily manually cleaned. Now, these here are our plate chillers, and we have a 125 and 160 kilowatt capacity. Unlike the immersion chillers, there isn't a limit on batch size as such, but what you will want to do is chill in one pass rather than running it through the chiller back to the boil kettle. So the sequence is drop the wort from the kettle through the chiller directly to your fermenter. Now, as long as your fermenter is below the drain valve on your kettle, there is no need for a pump on either of these plate chillers. The easiest way to set them up is with hose lock style fittings for the water connections and cam locks for the wort side. And actually, we sell this as a kit with exactly that setup. It's important that these plate chillers are cleaned immediately after use by flushing and back flushing with water till you see it running clear. I then use CO2 to actually blast the water out, and I store them upside down. To sanitize, I simply fill with Star San solution and then drain just before use. Now, some brewers do worry that plate chillers are going to block, but in our experience, if you're using whole hops with a bazooka type filter or whirlpooling and using pellets, there will be no issue. If you have further questions, please let us know about chilling or anything else. Cheers. See you next week.